Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. All praise and glory is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and may the peace and blessings be upon His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Inshallah, what we're going to speak about today is a very important topic, because this is among the most important actions of a Muslim, which is the Salah. And as we know that if you perform something or you do something, sometimes the smallest thing can destroy it. The best example is you go ahead and you try to make the best dish or food. And let's say, for example, you underestimated how much salt you're supposed to put into this beautiful food. You cut up all these vegetables, all this meat, you went and got the most expensive meat. You prepared all day or been working all day preparing this dish. And then at the end of it, what happens? You put too much salt. First of all, the salt is probably the cheapest thing for that dish. That's the first thing. So the salt is not really worth much. But once you put too much salt and you destroy and you wreck the dish, you can't actually take the salt back out. You can't reverse it. It's wrecked. It's destroyed. Doesn't matter what you do. You want to add more water. You want to. It's the dish is not going to be the same. So you either throw the dish away and not eat anything, or you start over again. This is the example with the Salah. The Salah, you can put effort throughout the whole Salah. However, something that you may consider not to be of much importance can actually nullify your actual Salah. And if it doesn't nullify the Salah, it actually degrades the Salah in value. And there are a couple of things that can do that. These are some common mistakes that we see a lot. The first of those, and we see this on a constant basis, is intentionally preceding the Imam in the movements of the prayer and not following his movements. Now the Salah, the ruku', the sujood, the bows, and the prostrations, it goes with or behind the Imam. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that verily the Imam is to be completely followed. So if he makes takbir, you make takbir. And do not make takbir until he does so. And if he bows, then you bow. And don't bow until he does so. This is found in Bukhari. And this is likewise considered to be a pillar of Salah, that a person, he actually follows the Imam. But what do we find these days? Well, first of all, we find people sometimes even making takbir before the Imam. And the Imam is standing up for Salah and he's about to raise his hand, and someone's Allahu Akbar, he's made takbir already. So he makes takbir before the Imam. The other issue we find is people going into ruku' and sujood before the Imam, or coming back from ruku' before the Imam. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how fast you go in your Salah, you're still going to end up at the same. And the example I'll give, I remember once a person, he pulled up next to me in a car, and he was speeding, and he couldn't wait for the light to turn green. Right, so the light turned green, and we're off. We're driving, and he's weaving in and out of traffic, and he's flying, and he's taking all these risks. And guess where I met him? At the next red light. So he's at that red light. Then the same thing, he started going, and it turns green, weaving and going everywhere, and guess where we met him again? At the next red light. It doesn't matter how fast you're going, you're always going to meet the Imam where? At the red light. You're always going to meet him at a point where you can't beat him. You can't finish before him and leave. So either way, you have to stay behind him. Now, when does a person make his move? Now, a lot of people think that you actually make the move when the Imam, he says, the takbir, or he says Allahu Akbar. As soon as he says the alif, a person, he makes the move. Now subhanAllah, even in the worldly sense, the move is never made until the end of the buzzer, as they say. You know, so if you see, for example, a running race, they can't leave until the end of the buzzer. And the same thing with the salah. You don't leave when you hear the alif, you leave when you hear the ra. Allahu Akbar. When you hear that, then that means now it's time for me to move forward, to take the next move in the salah. And following the imam, that's why he's called an imam. Imam is a person that leads. And a person that leads, you can't be on the same level as a person that leads, because that means he's not a leader and you're not a follower. Even to the extent that if the imam was sick, and he came to salah and he could not stand, then the congregation, if he sits, who also sits? The congregation. Why? That's how important the imam is in salah. Once the Prophet ﷺ, he was praying, and he removed his shoes or his khuf in salah. And what did the companions do? Done exactly the same thing. They followed the imam in salah. And the Prophet ﷺ told them that Jibreel ﷺ came to him and told him that he has najasa on his shoes, that's why he removed them. But just to show how much the companions, radiallahu anhum, they used to follow the Prophet ﷺ or follow the imam in salah. Obviously, if he's doing something against the Quran and Sunnah, this is different. But if he's doing something within the Quran and Sunnah, like for example sitting, even to that extent, we also follow. And that's another important thing, the word follow, meaning you're always going to be behind. So until he makes takbir, then you make takbir. Now sometimes we forget, or sometimes the imam might be weak and he might be slow. And we find this a lot of time when the imam is going down to sujood, yani from ruku', he's coming down. A lot of times what ends up happening, especially if it's a very elderly man, an elderly sheikh or an imam, he takes his time going down. You know, he's got arthritis. You actually have to wait. And the way he does it normally, or the way it should be done, is that Allahu Akbar should be on his way down, and by the time he gets to the bottom, he should have finished the takbir. You don't move until he finishes his takbir. So the back stays straight. A person who doesn't move, so you hear Allahu Akbar, and when he's down, when he's finished, then that's when you start. Not as he's going down, you start behind him. He has to finish his movement, or he made his way down. Why? Because a lot of them, they come, they kneel, they stretch their back muscles, right? And then they go into sujood, because they've got problems. And by that time, a lot of people are already in sujood. You have beaten the imam. And there's a lot of hadiths and a lot of ways in which the Prophet ﷺ even tried to discourage a person. That the Prophet ﷺ, to the many of the hadith, whoever beats the imam, don't you fear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will change your head to the head of a donkey? This is a hadith. And some of the ulama, they said, if you turn one day and you find a man, his head is changed to a head of a donkey, you'll say, Sadaqa Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But what's also meant by this hadith is that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is making you hate this action so much. The action of beating the imam in salah. And to the extent the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will change this person's head to the head of a donkey. This should really make a person, you know what I mean? Hate this action. Another common mistake we see, and surprisingly, sometimes when you come to the masjid or you're coming from the front, you actually realize that a lot. Very common and very misunderstood is raising the eyes to the sky during salah, or looking right or looking left without a cause. So a person is praying and he's looking up to the sky, or he's looking right or he's looking left. The worst of them is looking up towards the sky. The Prophet ﷺ, And when the Prophet ﷺ attributes a punishment to something, it means that this thing is sinful and a Muslim should avoid it. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, let the people stop raising their eyes to the sky in Salah, or let their sight not return to them. May they be blinded. And this is in Muslim, Sahih Muslim. Why? The Prophet ﷺ, again, when the Prophet ﷺ wants you to stop something or an action which is not right, the Prophet ﷺ sometimes will attach something negative to it. So let them stop raising the eyes to the sky. Why? Or let their sight not return to them. Let their sight be taken away. And it's better for you not to look to the sky while you're in Salah. And the person might say, what's the wisdom of this? Because the Salah, where should a person be looking? In front of him, the place of prostration. And then we go to the other side of things, is when a person starts to make his eyes wander to the right and to the left. And also sometimes, he can sometimes move his body also to the right and left. Now, when is it allowed to actually do this? Now, you are allowed to take your eyes off the direction of the Qibla. When? If there's a snake that comes in front of you, right? Or a spider, or a scorpion, or there's danger, or there's something of great need or necessity or importance. Once the companions of Muhammad ﷺ were praying behind him, and the Prophet ﷺ took so long in sujood, Ibn Abbas, he actually lifted his head up from Salah to see if the Prophet ﷺ was okay. See where it becomes allowable. They actually feed that something happened to the Prophet ﷺ because he was in sujood for such a long time. So sometimes in the base of necessity, it is allowed. And the Prophet ﷺ warned about looking around and turning around in Salah. Another action that we see a lot, and then people might say, I don't see it much. If you really pay attention, it's not maybe the same version, but it's very, very similar to it. The Prophet ﷺ forbade an action in Salah. And this action, again, a Muslim, he should take notice of this. Because sometimes we don't realize, or sometimes we're at home, we're praying, we're tired, we might do it. The Prophet ﷺ forbade 3 things in Salah. One of them is the forbade pecking like a rooster. Just touching the ground very quickly. Sitting or lying or prostrating on the forearms like a dog, and looking around like a fox. Now look at these 3 things, and we'll teach every single, we'll go through every single one of them. The first one he forbade, and he mentioned this to Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he forbade pecking like a rooster. Now if you actually time yourself, subhana bil ala, subhana bil ala, subhana bil ala, that takes a few seconds. Sometimes people, they make prostration so fast, there's no way they're able to say that 3 times and make dua also at the same time. At other times, you actually find people that their head does not touch the ground. Their head does not touch the ground. And once the brothers, they saw a man praying and his head was not touching the ground. So they came to him and said, Akhi, it's part of the pillar of Salah, arkan of Salah. Your Salah is not accepted if your head does not touch the ground. He said, Akhi, you're praying, and when he goes down, his head is not touching the ground. Very unusual. Why is your head not touching the ground? Akhi, I work in a place, I don't want the mark of the prostration to be on my forehead. This is how some people think. I don't want to wreck my hair, I just put, just fixed it up. But unfortunately, this is the way that people think. So one is pecking like a rooster, and 2 is not actually putting the head on the ground properly. And with the head, what is part of the head? The nose. That's actually considered as one. The forehead and the nose. So you find some people, sometimes they put their nose but not their forehead. Or they put their forehead but not their nose. The correct way is both. And like I said, pecking like the rooster. Now we all know how a rooster pecks at things. The Prophet ﷺ forbade this. Also in sujood, the forearms on the ground. The Prophet ﷺ forbade that also. And we mentioned also looking around like a fox. Another common mistake that we see in Salah is wearing a thin garment that does not cover the awrah or the private part. Now, we have to cover ourselves. Now, the Prophet ﷺ described our awrah for the woman in Salah, which is, as we know, the hijab. And he also prescribed the covering of a man for Salah. So the awrah, it has different significance or different rulings at different times. For example, a woman in front of another woman, a woman in front of a mahram, a woman out in the street, and even a woman in Salah. But the woman in Salah is the same as the man. However, the man, when it comes to Salah, there is a couple of extra things which is advised by the Prophet ﷺ that he has to cover. The first of those that people neglect a lot is the shoulders. Mentioned in Bukhari, the Prophet ﷺ commanded for us to cover our shoulders in Salah. This is why when you find we're in Umrah, for example, we uncover one shoulder, it's fine. When we're doing tawaf. But when it comes to Salah, we have to cover both. That is from the actions of Salah, for a man to cover his shoulders in Salah. The second is that his pants might be fine. It might be okay. Out on the street, at work, whatever. But when it comes down to Salah, it's not okay. Why? Because when he goes into ruku' or sujood, what happens? It tightens up. And you're able to see the figure of the man. Or even worse, his shirt might be fine. But when he goes into ruku', his behind shows, for example. That can nullify your Salah. That can nullify your Salah. So how does a person avoid that? Well, first of all, always make sure that the clothes that you're wearing obviously is Salah proof, as they say. Or for example, if you're fine and you don't have any problems and the awrah's all covered, but your only issue you have is ruku' or sujood, for example, buy a izar or have a thawb and just keep it in your car. And whenever comes time for Salah, just put them on. Just wear them. Because that's something that we find a lot. And we're always having people when they're praying, either their shorts are too short, and that's another thing. The shorts, sometimes the shorts are fine. But when you go into the sitting of after sujood, what happens? The shorts they come up. So that's what a person, so when you look at him here, his awrah's covered, everything's fine. He's working, he's jumping around, it's fine. But when he goes into sujood, the pants come up. So that's something that also, that's a very, very common mistake that people get themselves into. Another thing that we find in Salah, the Prophet ﷺ forbade rubbing the pebbles during Salah due to the effect of khushu'. And he said, if any of you performs the prayer, let him not rub pebbles, for mercy is turned towards him. Now, let him not rub the pebbles. So mercy turns towards him. Why? Because he's not distracted. Now, what does it mean about rubbing the pebbles? This is a good question. What does it mean, rubbing the pebbles? How can you rub pebbles in Salah? So what would happen if you've ever prayed in a place where there's pebbles? When you go into sujood and you find pebbles, what do? You actually move the pebbles aside while you're in salah. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, if you perform the prayer, do not rub the pebbles, meaning don't try to clean the ground. There's another narration that says, if you're going to do it, don't do more than 3 times. But don't be distracted with that. And this is a general rule of distraction in salah. So a person, what ends up happening is he's praying, he sees a bit of dust, he tries to clean it off, he's devaluing his salah. Now, among all the opinions about if you do it 3 times or 5 times, whatever it may be, probably the one that makes sense the most, that if you look at a person, if you were just walking by and you saw a person do something and it doesn't appear that he's in salah, then his salah is nullified. That means it doesn't appear a person in salah. That means he's done so much in his actions that he's actually not praying rather than praying, if that makes sense. So if you're walking past and you see a person doing this, would you think he's in salah? No, you wouldn't. Or if you saw a person do that, you wouldn't appear, it doesn't appear that person's in salah. So we say those actions will actually nullify the salah. However, a person's praying and does this, is that fine? He still appears to be in salah. And it's an urge, and it's an itch, and he just itches or whatever. But unnecessary movements, like I said, can really, really distract a person. So we find people, they sometimes really get distracted with things. Especially when they start playing. Do I have my keys? They comes and he feels, yeah, my keys are here. I've got my phone, yeah, my phone's here. My watch, yeah, my watch is... This is distraction in salah. And to the point that sometimes people don't even know what ruku' they're up to. Even they're praying behind the imam and they're confused. Am I number 1, number 2, or number 3, or number 4? Where am I up to? Why? Because of so much distractions that they've had in salah. And this comes about by, there is a devil, a shaitan, and this is his job. This is his job. I forgot his name. The Prophet ﷺ gave him the name. Khanza, I think. Khanza? And his job description is to distract you from salah. So he's waiting all day. When it comes to salah, he goes into action. And as soon as, subhanAllah, your mind is free, you're not thinking about anything in this dunya, everything, as soon as you say Allahu Akbar, then you start remembering everything you forgot. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, if you feel his presence, you feel him coming to you, whispering to you, you say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, and you spittle 3 times to your left side. And yes, you are moving your face away, but this is an exception because the Prophet ﷺ, he taught us this. Another thing is also the adhan and the iqamah before salah. They will also drive the shaitan away. So if you feel his presence, meaning this person is a person to distract, then move it away. Another thing, once the Prophet ﷺ was given a garment, and this garment had patterns and things like that on it. So once the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed in that, and after he prayed, he actually removed it. And he told one of his wives to get rid of it. He said, because it's destructive in salah. So what we learn from this hadith is that when we pray, don't put things that distract us. For example, don't pray in front of the TV. A lot of Muslims, they pray with the TV on. They're praying or breaking news, and then they start, thinking what's going on. Or some people, they don't want to miss out on their show, so they pray next to the TV, listening to see what's going on. What happens, what happens with Sandra and James, which are after the age. But sometimes you have people that do that. When a person comes for prayer, if he doesn't get his house, khalas, TV off, radio off, everything off, kids, khalas, sit here, it's salah time. It's salah time. You heard the saying before, when a child sees someone in Salah, what does he say? He sees once I saw this image, it had what do adults see? And it was just a person praying. Yeah? What do kids see? It was a picture of those rocking horses. Right? So when the kids, when they see someone praying, what do they see? They see a rocking horse. What's the first thing they do? Jump on the back. Now even though there's nothing wrong with that Islamically, because children used to jump on the back of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But you don't want that to, and that was a few instances that happened. But you don't want that to happen every single time that you pray. And you don't know if you should go up from sujood or what you should do, because your son's in a position where if you move he'll fall, and if you don't move, you don't know what to do, so you just stay in that position. And you want to limit all your distractions as possible. The phone, khalas, that's on silent. I'm not going to have any distractions, even in the masjid, and even if I'm praying at home. I'm going to avoid any distractions. Another common mistake, and there's maybe about 3 or 4 common ones, not making the line straight. Not making the line straight. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, straighten your lines, for verily straightening of the lines is the part of the correct performance of Salah. And this is found in Bukhari and Muslim. And the Prophet ﷺ, he also said, straighten your lines, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause opposition between your hearts. The order of straightening the lines and taking care to do so is mentioned in so many hadiths. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, straighten your lines, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause disunity in your hearts. And so ordering the straightening of the line, we find, and he mentioned quite a few hadith. But look at this very carefully, because there was actually some research done on it about human beings that line up together, right? That stand in line together. Straighten your lines, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause disunity between your hearts. Now they found that when human beings, like in the army, they're all in straight lines, and they found when human beings are in sync with one another, their heart rhythms start to change, and they start beating at the same beat. SubhanAllah, ya Rabb. The heart starts beating at the same beat. And that's something amazing, subhanAllah. So when the lines are not straight, the hearts are not physically and spiritually not together. And so disunity doesn't spread in your heart. And you find when people, they're not close together, they're not straight. Your brother stands in Salah and the brother next to him doesn't want to stand next to him. Then all of a sudden what happens? Imagine if you stood next to a brother, he moved away from you. Now what would happen to your heart? Would you get cut? What's wrong with this guy? What doesn't want to stand next to me? You get upset. So see how the disunity starts. And if you hate a brother and he stood next to you in Salah, straight, lined, and close to you, subhanAllah, you love him straight away. You love him straight away, subhanAllah. That's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unites the hearts in Salah. So straighten the lines. And during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they had sand in the masjid. And their lines were straight. We have lines, we have lasers, we have tape, we have so much different technology. And I remember a masjid once had line at the bottom and line at the top too. So you can't get it right, can't get it wrong, afwan. And still the lines are not straight. And we have to really focus on the lines being straight. And sometimes they're weaving, sometimes, what more do we want? And is anything more? And our lines are like our parking. One there, one there, one there, one here. And it's straight lines. It's the only thing we have to focus. If the lines are straight, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unites the hearts. I remember once, and I remember this salah a lot. It was at a park and a couple of the mashayikh were there. The shaykh probably spent about a good 10 minutes making sure the line was dead straight and every person's ankle was touching the ankle of the other brother. And subhanAllah ya Rab, even the takbir, everyone done the takbir at the same time. The sujood, the ruku', because everyone is in sequence with one another. Subhanallah. And I still remember that salah because it was something different. And he really made focus that everyone stayed in their position and on their straight line. So that's another common mistake that we find. That people, they're not in straight lines, or they pray with their feet together, for example, or one person can throw the line out of sequence. Another common mistake we find is raising the feet from the ground when you're in sujood. This can nullify your salah. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said that he was commanded to prostrate on 7 parts of the body. What are those 7 parts of the body? They are the nose and the forehead, the hands, the knees, and the feet. And everything should be pointed towards the Qibla. The hands and the toes are also pointing towards the Qibla. Now, if one of these things is off the ground, then your salah is nullified. Your salah is nullified. A lot of people, when they go into sujood, their head's on the ground. Where's their feet? Up in the air. And even Islamically, if you find someone in that position, Islamically, you can go up to him and push his feet down. You can actually push his feet to signal to him. If you just push his feet down to let him know that his feet is touching the ground. And how do we know that? Because the Prophet ﷺ saw a man praying with his left hand over his right. So what did the Prophet ﷺ do? He switched them over. So you can correct the person while he's in salah. Or if you see a brother, he comes to this masjid, it's probably happened before, and he's prayed that way, for example. Yeah, he's prayed in a different direction. And sometimes you walk in, and a person won't realize. You walk in, he'll think, okay, line's here, I'm not sure, maybe it's that way, and he gets confused, and he's praying in that direction, for example. You can come and you can move him around and shift him around and point him to the right direction. So if you're doing it to correct someone's salah, even if his backside is showing, you pull the shirt down, or at times, we used to have these robes we put around the shoulders. If you found the person and he was exposing a lot, while he was in salah, we just put it onto his shoulders, so it covers him when he's in sujood. It's that stuff, you're perfecting someone's salah. You're helping someone in their salah. That is allowed. But to make sure that the feet is touching the ground, that is one of the pillars of the salah. Now, another common mistake is that when we do come late to the mosque, there's 2 mistakes that we do. The first thing is that we run to the masjid. We run to the masjid. And sometimes it's part of human nature that if we know the salah is on, if I was walking calmly, I was taking it easy and smiling, and the salah started, and you were next to me, or someone is next to me, why is he so comfortable? Quick, we have to get the salah. And we rush and rush and rush and rush and rush and rush to get the salah. This is actually not allowed. Once it happened during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, where there was people rushing. The people rushing. And not just that, when you rush, you make a lot of noise and you start distracting people. You start distracting, not that. And imagine you come in, you throw the shoes, the door swings open, ta, dish, dish, ta, ta, ta. You come to salah, Allah Akbar. You've just distracted the whole congregation. So salah, come to salah in peace, in calm and tranquility. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, if you come to the salah and we are making sujood, then you also make sujood. This is another issue, Kevin. So when you do come to the salah, what is this hadith telling us? It's telling us, khalas, you join the salah where the imam is. So if the imam is in sujood, khalas, just join him in sujood. There's no problem. You're allowed to Islamically join the imam at any time of the salah. So what we find, one, people rushing because they're trying to catch the open takbir. Habibi, even if the salah is gone and he's in ruku or he's in the middle of the Fatiha or whatever, it's okay, it's fine. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you that exception, you can say. Right? And whatever you miss, you can make it up after. That's the first. So joining the not rushing to the mosque, and at the same time joining the imam at whatever position he's in. In which situation do you actually have to make the tahiyyat 4 times? Maghrib? In the second last. That's when you end up making the tahiyyat 4 times. So yeah, taking it easy, not rushing, coming to the masjid, coming in calm, coming in peace. Even if you have to make wudu, it's fine. You catch the salah. It's as long as you don't distract the people, that's around you. And then finally, another common mistake in salah.
Joining in any position, but to say opening takbir first, then.
Yes. So when you come, as usual, there's 2 takbirs to join. Allahu Akbar to enter the salah, and then Allahu Akbar to the position. And even if they're in sujood, don't sit there and, okay, I'm going to wait for them to stand up. Like some people sit there and they wait for them to stand up. No, you join as soon as you get this. Allahu Akbar, and then Allahu Akbar to join whatever position they're in. Now, when would you miss? Okay, so you've come, you're about to say Allahu Akbar, and then the Imam says, Sami Allah alhamdulillah. You've missed that ruk'ah. If you haven't entered that position before the Imams come up, then you've missed it. That's the one that you have to make up. Now, another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and we end off with this one. There is so many things, but these are just some common things. And there's some things, for example, reciting the Surah Al-Fatiha properly, making sure that it's correct. Like for example, an'amta alayhim instead of saying an'amta alayhim. There's things like that we have to sort of pay attention to. But the best thing for the Surah Al-Fatiha, sit with a sheikh, sit with someone that has ijazah in the Quran, or is a Quran teacher, and just say, listen to my Surah Al-Fatiha and tell me if I'm saying it correct, because this is one of the arkan of salah, and if it's incorrect, then again your salah is also incorrect. Now, what happens if you come? So you come to the masjid and you pray. Let's say, for example, Asr is 15 minutes after Adhan. Let's say, for example, you came 5 minutes after Adhan, you didn't find anyone, and then you prayed the Asr. Or you prayed Dhuhr before the congregation. This happened during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when 2 men, they prayed Fajr already. And then they came and they found the Prophet ﷺ praying Fajr. So what did they do? They said, we prayed Fajr already. So they sat back in the mosque and he waited. After the Prophet ﷺ said, why didn't you join? And it would have counted for you as nafil, as a sunnah prayer. Why is that? Because the general rule is warka'u ma'ar rak'ain. That's the general rule. Prostrate with those that prostrate. Meaning if the congregation is praying, no Muslim should be sitting, watching. What I mean the congregation, every masjid has a main congregation. Doesn't mean that you've prayed the congregation, there's another congregation at the back you have to join. No, there's a main congregation. Every masjid has the main primary congregation. If you come, if you say, I've prayed already, you should actually join the congregation. That was the advice in the way of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Why? Because that's something special. That congregation in the masjid, it's something special. And even if you've prayed, you're going to be getting more reward. And like I said, that's the general rule of praying with those that prostrate. And maybe you can add to that also, that if you find the brother, and this happened again during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when a man came into the masjid and he missed the salah, and the Prophet ﷺ said, who wants to give him sadaqah? Who wants to give him charity? How would they give him charity? By giving him money? No.
Pray with him.
Pray with him. Pray with him. So sometimes you find the brother that comes to the masjid, he's like, I missed that. If you have sunnah prayer to pray, if, for example, let's say it's dhuhr, and you want to pray sunnah. Your intention could be sunnah, his intention is dhuhr, but you're praying with him, you're building his reward. And you're giving him sadaqah. How? Because his reward is more because you're praying together. So this is another thing that sometimes we find, that a person, he comes to the masjid and he ends up praying by himself. No, if we have the opportunity, we should help him. And like I said, there are a lot of other common mistakes. SubhanAllah, there's a lot that we see. We see in Salah, for example, the takbir not done properly. We have a new fashion of takbir. I call it the claw takbir. Like that. There's some people that make takbir, they come to Allah Akbar. It's not takbir. The Prophet ﷺ takbir was to the level of the shoulders or the ears. And the palms pointing towards the qibla. Allahu Akbar. Now we've got this takbir. Allah, I don't know where it's come from. Have you seen it? I don't know, maybe the brothers go to the gym, they just used it. But yes, that's kangaroo. But subhanAllah, how it is, it's not a takbir. Takbir has to go all the way up. Now, do you know one of the only, it's funny because if you don't do it, it doesn't nullify your salah, but it nullifies your salah. Does that make sense? And if you don't do it, it doesn't cancel your salah, but it cancels your salah. That doesn't make sense, does it? The reason it doesn't make sense is because you're not in salah for it to be cancelled. You didn't pray, you haven't started praying. And that's the takbir. If you don't make the takbir properly, you haven't entered salah. So you're not really cancelling it, because to cancel it you have to be in it. But at the same time, you're not praying. And that's if you don't do the takbir. And then that's what we said, that's why the takbir is very, very important. Because this is where the scholars, they said, is this a precondition or a condition of salah? Because there's preconditions and there's a condition. Some put it in precondition. Why? Because if it's not done, then a person doesn't enter prayer. Because the general rule, the Prophet ﷺ said, prayer starts with takbir and ends with taslim. Sometimes you might find some videos or some images of, for example, they said the qibla is that way, and someone making sajdat as-sahw, for example, in that direction. Is that allowed Islamically? And the qibla is that way. And the prostration of thankfulness, and he got good news or whatever, is done in that direction. Shukr, afwan. Huh? Does it have to be facing the qibla?
No, I think a lot of things
Is that a salah?
No. The prostration of
thankfulness.
It need to be.
Yeah. Need to be qibla? And it's sunnah to be the qibla, but it doesn't have to be. Why? Because it's not salah. Remember the Prophet ﷺ said, salah starts with takbir and ends with taslim. So whatever doesn't start with takbir and doesn't end with taslim, doesn't fall underneath the rules of salah. Another example of that is the janazah prayer. It starts with takbir, ends with taslim. So that has to be towards the qibla. And the other variations of salah, like the salah of rain and the lunar and all those other types of salah, because they start with takbir and they end with taslim, that means they fall underneath the conditions of salah. Even if someone makes a condition of salah is what? Wudu. If someone makes that as two prostrations without wudu, it's allowed. Even though it's not advised. There's a difference between what's something being accepted and something that's not advised. When you mention the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or you make sujood, it always should be in wudu. But we're talking, is it accepted or not accepted? If you got good news and he just went into prostration, that's accepted from him. Even though he should be in wudu, but because it's not salah. And because it's not salah, it doesn't hold the conditions, the conditions of salah. But the sunnah, yes, a person should have wudu, and if you were to do it, the best way to do it, according to the sunnah, is facing the facing the Qibla.
Like sujood
Means,
tilawah.
Exactly.
When
Huh?
making dua or something.
And like, for example, making dua.
when you are reciting Quran and there is Sahiba,
Sujood
you
tilawah.
can do it anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you can do it anywhere.
We said the sunnah is always even dua. The sunnah to do dua is to face
Yeah.
Qibla, but sometimes we make dua in our car, we make dua in our bed, we make dua. You know what I mean? We don't say dua it's not accepted, but if salah, if you pray in a different direction, it's not accepted.
Brother's question was
My question
we're reciting Quran and the
reciting
sujood.
the Quran.
Yeah.
Do we have to be in a qibla or other direction we can do so?
No, see,
Basically in this direction.
Prostration of recitation.
yeah, and like I said, it's not salah. It doesn't fall underneath the conditions of salah. So, if you know which way the qibla is, from the sunnah, yes. But if you find a brother doing it in a different direction, you can't say it's not accepted. Because it doesn't fall the conditions of salah. But from the sunnah, yeah, it has to, yes, you have to distinguish those two. But with salah, if you pray in a different direction, khalas, it's not accepted.